Maria Santos pushed her cleaning cart through the empty hallways of the Hartwell Financial Building. The clock on the wall showed 2:15 a.m. She had been working the night shift for 3 years now. Every night was the same. Clean the offices, empty the trash, mop the floors, and wipe down the windows. The building was quiet at this time. All the business people had gone home hours ago. Only Maria and the security guard were left. She liked it this way. No one bothered her. No one looked down on her. She could work in peace and think about her life. Maria was 34 years old. She had 2 children, Sophia, who was 12, and Miguel, who was 9. They lived in a small apartment across town. Maria worked nights so she could be home when they got back from school. It was not easy being a single mother, but she did what she had to do. Before her children were born, Maria had a different life. She studied music at the conservatory. She played piano for hours every day. Her teachers said she was very good. They said she could become a professional pianist. But then she met Carlos, fell in love, and got married. The music took second place to family life. When Carlos died in a car accident 5 years ago, Maria had to find work quickly. She had no money saved up. The insurance was not enough. She needed a job that paid right away. Cleaning buildings was hard work, but it paid the bills. It kept food on the table and a roof over their heads. Maria stopped her cart in front of the elevator. She pressed the button for the top floor, the executive level. This was where the big bosses had their offices. The carpet was thicker here. The furniture was more expensive. Everything looked perfect and untouched. She started with Mr. Johnson's office. He was the head of sales. His desk was covered with papers and coffee cups. Maria cleaned around them carefully. She emptied his trash and dusted his computer. Then she moved to the next office. As she worked, Maria thought about her children. Sophia was doing well in school, but she needed new shoes. Miguel wanted to join the soccer team, but it cost money. Maria calculated the bills in her head. Rent, food, electricity, school supplies. There was never enough money left over for extras. The executive floor had 12 offices and 1 large conference room. The conference room was Maria's favorite place to clean. It had big windows that looked out over the city. The table was made of dark wood that shone when she polished it. But the most beautiful thing in the room was the piano. It was a grand piano, black and shiny. Maria had never seen such a beautiful instrument up close. The first time she saw it, she almost cried. It reminded her of the piano at the conservatory where she used to practice. She wondered who played it. Probably no one, she thought. She was just there to look impressive. Every night, Maria saved the conference room for last. She would dust the piano very carefully. She would polish the wood until it gleamed. Sometimes she would lift the lid and look at the keys. They were white and black, perfectly aligned, waiting to make music. One night about 2 months ago, Maria had been very sad. It was the anniversary of Carlos's death. She had been thinking about him all day. When she got to the conference room, she sat down at the piano bench. She just wanted to remember what it felt like to sit at a piano again. Without thinking, she pressed one key, then another. The sound filled the room. It had been so long since she heard a piano that beautiful. Before she knew it, she was playing a simple song she remembered from her lessons. The feeling was incredible. Her fingers remembered where to go. The music came back to her like an old friend. For 20 minutes, she forgot about everything else. She forgot about the bills, the stress, the loneliness. She was just Maria the pianist again. After that night, she started playing more often. Always during her break, always when the building was empty. She would play songs from memory, pieces by Bach, Chopin, and other composers she had studied years ago. Her fingers were rusty at first, but they got better with practice. Playing the piano became the best part of her night. It reminded her that she was more than just a cleaning lady. She was someone who had dreams once. She was someone who could make beautiful music. Even if no one else knew it, she knew it about herself. Maria never played for very long, just 15 or 20 minutes during her break. She was always careful to look around first to make sure no one was watching. She would clean her hands before she touched the keys. She would put everything back exactly as she found it. The security guard, Mr. Peterson, worked at the front desk downstairs. He was an older man who mostly read newspapers and drank coffee. He never came up to check on her. As long as she did her job and didn't cause trouble, he left her alone. Maria knew she was taking a risk by playing the piano. If someone found out, she could lose her job. But she couldn't help herself. The music was like food for her soul. After 3 years of just working and worrying about money, she needed something that made her feel alive again. Tonight was like any other night. Maria finished cleaning all the offices. She saved the conference room for last, just like always. She pushed her cart inside and closed the door behind her. The city lights twinkled outside the big windows. The piano sat in the corner waiting for her. Maria looked at the clock. It was 2:45 a.m. She had 15 minutes before she needed to finish up and get ready to go home. She walked over to the piano and sat down on the bench. She lifted the lid carefully and looked at the keys. She had been practicing a piece by Chopin lately. It was called Nocturne in E-flat major. She had learned it at the conservatory 15 years ago. It was one of her favorites, slow, beautiful, and sad. It reminded her of her old dreams. Maria placed her fingers on the keys. She took a deep breath and started to play. The notes floated through the air like whispers. The melody was gentle and peaceful. For those few minutes, the conference room became her concert hall. The empty chairs became her audience. She was not Maria the cleaning lady. She was Maria the pianist. She played with her eyes closed, letting the music take her away from everything else. She thought about Carlos and how proud he would be. She thought about Sofia and Miguel sleeping safely at home. She thought about the life she used to have and the person she used to be. The music filled the room and her heart. For these precious minutes, everything was perfect. The next Tuesday night was quiet, just like always. Maria had finished cleaning the lower floors and was making her way up to the executive level. Her cart wheels squeaked softly as she pushed it down the empty hallway. The sound echoed in the silence. Maria felt good tonight. Sofia had gotten an A on her math test and Miguel had made a new friend at school. Small victories, but they made her happy. When her children were happy, she was happy too. She cleaned the offices one by one. Mr. Thompson's office smelled like old coffee and aftershave. Mrs. Williams had left her plants sitting in little puddles of water again. Maria wiped them up and made sure the plants had enough light from the window. She liked taking care of things, even small things like office plants. The conference room was waiting for her like it always was. Maria pushed her cart inside and looked around. Everything was exactly the same. The long table, the leather chairs, the big windows, and the beautiful piano in the corner. But something was different tonight. Maria felt more confident than usual. She had been playing for 2 months now and her fingers were getting stronger. The music was coming back to her more easily. She remembered songs she thought she had forgotten forever. Maria did her cleaning first, just like always. She dusted the table and chairs. She cleaned the windows until they sparkled. She vacuumed the thick carpet. Then she saved the piano for last. She walked over to it slowly, like she was approaching an old friend. The piano was so beautiful under the city lights coming through the windows. Maria ran her hand along the smooth black surface. She could see her reflection in the shiny wood. Tonight she wanted to play something special. The Chopin piece had been going through her head all week. She had been humming it while she worked, remembering how it felt under her fingers. She knew it by heart now. Every note, every pause, every gentle rise and fall of the melody. Maria sat down on the bench and lifted the piano lid. The keys seemed to glow in the dim light. She looked at the clock. 2:30 a.m. She had plenty of time tonight. Mr. Peterson was probably asleep at his desk downstairs and the building was completely empty. She placed her hands on the keys and began to play. The first notes of the Nocturne in E-flat major filled the room like whispered secrets. The melody was so beautiful it almost made Maria cry. Her fingers moved across the keys with growing confidence. She remembered her old teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, telling her to play with feeling, not just with technique. Music is not just about hitting the right notes, Mrs. Rodriguez used to say. It's about telling a story with your heart. Tonight, Maria felt like she was telling her story. The slow, sad parts reminded her of losing Carlos, of the lonely nights when she didn't know how she would take care of her children alone. The gentle, hopeful parts made her think of Sofia's laugh and Miguel's hugs. The music held all of her feelings, the sadness, the love, the fear, and the hope. As she played, Maria's eyes closed. She forgot about the cleaning cart behind her. She forgot about the offices she still had to finish. She forgot about everything except the music flowing from her fingers. The sound filled the large room and seemed to wrap around her like a warm blanket. The piano was perfect. Every key responded to her touch exactly the way it should. The sound was rich and clear. Maria had never played on such a beautiful instrument. At home, she only had an old keyboard that Sofia had gotten for Christmas 2 years ago. It worked, but it wasn't the same as a real piano. This piano made every note sound important. Even the softest touches created beautiful sounds. Maria could feel the vibrations through the bench, through her whole body. It was like the piano was alive, singing with her. She played the nocturne all the way through, then started it again. She couldn't stop herself. The music was too beautiful, the feeling too perfect. She had forgotten how much she loved this, how much she needed this. For 20 minutes, Maria was not a cleaning lady. She was not a single mother worried about money. She was not someone who had given up her dreams. She was a musician, a pianist, an artist. She was the person she used to be and the person she still was deep inside. The music echoed off the walls and high ceiling. The acoustics in the conference room were amazing. Every note was clear and pure. Maria felt like she was performing in a concert hall, not sitting alone in an empty office building at 3 in the morning. She played other pieces too. A Bach invention she had learned as a teenager. A Debussy prelude that always made her think of water and sunlight. Her fingers remembered them all. Muscle memory is a wonderful thing. Even after years of not playing, her hands knew where to go. As she played, Maria thought about her old dreams. She had wanted to be a concert pianist once. She had pictured herself on stage wearing a beautiful dress, playing for hundreds of people. She had imagined traveling to different cities, recording albums, teaching music to young students. Life had taken her in a different direction, but the dreams were still there. They lived in her fingers, in her heart, in the music she played when no one was listening. Maybe it was too late for concerts and recordings, but it wasn't too late for this, for the pure joy of making music. The building was completely silent except for her playing. No phones ringing, no people talking, no computers humming. Just Maria and the piano and the beautiful music floating through the empty rooms. What Maria didn't know was that the building had recently installed a new security system. The old cameras only recorded video, but the new ones recorded sound too. Every note she played, every gentle melody, every passionate moment was being captured and stored on the security computer in the basement. The system was so new that even Mr. Peterson didn't know about the audio recording feature. The company that installed it had mentioned it to Mr. Hartwell, the building owner, but he barely paid attention. He was more concerned with preventing break-ins than with recording piano music. So Maria played on, unaware that her secret performances were being documented. She was lost in the music, in the memories, in the pure happiness of doing what she loved most in the world. When she finally stopped playing, the silence felt strange. The last notes hung in the air for a moment before fading away. Maria sat still, her hands resting on the keys, her heart full of music. She looked at the clock. She had been playing for almost 30 minutes. Time always went by so fast when she was at the piano. She needed to finish her work and get ready to go home. Maria closed the piano lid gently and stood up. She looked around to make sure everything was exactly as she had found it. Then she went back to her cleaning cart and finished wiping down the conference table. As she worked, she hummed the Chopin melody quietly to herself. The music was still playing in her head, still making her feel alive and happy. She pushed her cart out of the conference room and closed the door behind her. Maria had no idea that her beautiful performance had been recorded. She had no idea that soon someone would discover her secret. All she knew was that for 30 perfect minutes she had been herself again. Richard Hartwell III was not in a good mood. He had been awake since 4 a.m., going over numbers for the big board meeting. The company was doing well, but there were always problems to solve and people to manage. That's what happened when you ran a business worth millions of dollars. Richard came from money. His grandfather had started Hartwell Financial 60 years ago. His father had grown it bigger. Now it was Richard's turn to keep the family business on top. He worked hard for it, but he also expected everything to be perfect. His building, his employees, his reputation, everything had to be just right. This morning was especially important. The board of directors was meeting at 7 a.m. to discuss a big deal. Richard wanted to get to the office early to prepare. He liked to be ready for everything. Richard drove his expensive car through the empty streets. The sun was just starting to come up. Most people were still asleep, but Richard was always up early. Early bird gets the worm, his father used to say. Richard lived by those words. He parked in his private spot in the underground garage. The security guard at the front desk looked surprised to see him so early. "Good morning, Mr. Hartwell," the guard said. "You're here very early today." "Big meeting," Richard replied shortly. He didn't like to chat with the staff. He believed in keeping business relationships professional. Friendly talk was a waste of time. Richard took the elevator up to the executive floor. The hallway was dark and quiet. He walked toward his corner office, thinking about the presentation he needed to give. The numbers had to be perfect. The charts had to be clear. Everything had to show that Hartwell Financial was the best choice for investors. Then he heard something that made him stop walking. Piano music. Richard stood still and listened. Someone was playing piano in his building. The music was coming from the conference room. It was beautiful music, but that wasn't the point. Who was in there? And why were they playing his piano? The piano had cost $40,000. It was a real Steinway grand piano, bought to impress clients and investors. It showed that Hartwell Financial was successful and classy. Richard himself couldn't play piano, but he liked having expensive things in his office building. The music continued. It was some kind of classical piece, played very well. Whoever was in there knew how to play, but Richard didn't care how good it sounded. This was his building, his piano, and no one had permission to use it. Richard walked quickly toward the conference room. The music got louder as he got closer. It was definitely coming from inside. He could see light under the door. Someone was definitely in there. He grabbed the door handle and pushed it open hard. The door banged against the wall. "What do you think you're doing?" Richard shouted. The music stopped immediately. Sitting at the piano was a woman in a cleaning uniform. She looked terrified. Her hands jumped away from the keys like they were on fire. Richard recognized her. She was one of the night cleaning people. He had seen her before, but never paid much attention. Cleaning staff were invisible to him. They did their job and stayed out of his way. But now she was sitting at his expensive piano like she owned the place. I'm sorry, Mr. Hartwell," the woman said. Her voice was shaking. You were just what?" Richard interrupted. His voice was cold and angry. "Playing my piano? Using my property like it's your personal toy?" The woman stood up quickly. She was small and thin, probably in her 30s. Her cleaning uniform was old but clean. Her hands were rough from work. She looked like she wanted to disappear. "I'm sorry," she said again. "I was on my break and I don't care what you were doing," Richard said. "Do you have any idea how much that piano cost? More than you make in 2 years, I guarantee that." The woman's face turned red. She looked down at the floor. "I was being very careful," she said quietly. "I didn't damage anything." Richard laughed, but it wasn't a nice laugh. "Careful? You think that matters? You're a cleaning lady. Your job is to clean, not to play around with expensive equipment that doesn't belong to you." He walked closer to the piano and looked it over, checking for any damage. Everything looked fine, but that wasn't the point. The point was respect. The point was knowing your place. "What's your name?" Richard asked. "Maria Santos," the woman answered. "Well, Maria Santos, let me make something very clear to you. This piano is not for your entertainment. This conference room is not your personal music room. You are here to clean, nothing else. Do you understand me?" Maria nodded, but Richard wasn't finished. "I could fire you right now," he continued. "I could have security escort you out of this building and make sure you never work in this city again. Do you understand how serious this is?" "Yes, sir," Maria whispered. "You're lucky I'm in a hurry this morning," Richard said. "But if I ever catch you touching anything in this building that isn't a mop or a trash can, you're out. Are we clear?" "Yes, sir." Richard looked at his watch. It was 6:15 a.m. The board members would start arriving soon, and he still needed to set up for the meeting. "Get back to your cleaning cart," he ordered. "And stay away from this room unless you're cleaning it. When you clean it, you dust around the piano. You don't touch the keys. You don't lift the lid. You pretend it doesn't exist, got it?" "Yes, sir." Maria walked quickly to her cleaning cart, which was sitting by the door. Her hands were shaking as she pushed it. Richard watched her go, making sure she understood the message. "And Santos," he called after her. She turned around looking scared. "I don't want to hear about this from anyone else. If word gets around that my cleaning staff thinks they can use company property for their hobbies, there will be consequences." "Big consequences?" Maria nodded and hurried out of the room. Richard stood alone in the conference room, looking at the piano. The lid was still open and the bench was pushed out. He closed the lid and pushed the bench back into place. Everything looked normal again. But he was still angry. How dare she think she could just walk in and play his piano? Cleaning people needed to know their place. They were hired to work, not to pretend they were something they weren't. Richard had worked hard to build his reputation and his company. He came from a good family, went to the best schools, and earned his position. He deserved respect from his employees. He deserved to have his property treated with care. People like Maria Santos needed to understand the difference between the people who owned things and the people who cleaned up after them. There was a natural order to the world, and everyone was happier when they stayed in their proper place. Richard walked to the windows and looked out at the city. The sun was higher now, and traffic was starting to pick up. Soon the building would be full of important business people making important deals. This was his world, his domain. He had bigger things to worry about than a cleaning lady who thought she could play piano. The board meeting was in less than an hour, and he needed to be ready. Richard sat down at the head of the conference table and opened his laptop. He had work to do, real work, important work, the kind of work that mattered. But as he looked at his presentation slides, he kept thinking about the music he had heard. It really had been beautiful. The woman could actually play very well. For just a moment, Richard wondered where she had learned to play like that. Then he shook his head and focused on his computer screen. It didn't matter where she learned. What mattered was that she knew her place now. The conference room was quiet again, just the way Richard liked it. Professional, serious, perfect for business. Outside in the hallway, Maria pushed her cart toward the elevator. Her whole body was shaking. Her heart was beating so fast she thought everyone could hear it. She had never been so scared in her life. For a moment, she thought she was going to lose her job. She thought about Sophia and Miguel at home, sleeping peacefully. What would she tell them if she got fired? The elevator doors closed and Maria rode down to the lower floors. She had 3 more hours of work left, but she didn't know how she was going to concentrate. All she could think about was Mr. Hartwell's angry voice and cold eyes. The way he looked at her like she was nothing. Like she was just a cleaning lady who had forgotten her place. But the worst part was that he was right. She was just a cleaning lady, and she had been foolish to think she could be anything more even for 20 minutes at night when no one was watching. Maria pushed her cart down the empty hallway and tried to forget the feeling of the piano keys under her fingers. She tried to forget the beautiful music and the way it made her feel alive. She had work to do, real work, the kind of work that paid the bills and kept her family safe. Word traveled fast in the Hartwell Financial Building. By the next morning, everyone knew about Maria and the piano. The day shift security guard heard it from Mr. Peterson. The receptionist overheard the security guards talking. The maintenance staff whispered about it in the break room. Maria didn't know how the story had spread so quickly. All she knew was that people were looking at her differently. Some looked at her with pity. Others seemed to think it was funny that a cleaning lady thought she could play piano. A few looked at her with disapproval, like she had done something terrible. Maria tried to keep her head down and do her work. She came in at 11 p.m. like always, cleaned the offices like always, and tried to pretend nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The other cleaning staff treated her differently now. Rosa, who had been friendly before, barely spoke to her. "Why did you have to touch that piano?" Rosa whispered one night. "Now Mr. Hartwell is going to be watching all of us more carefully." Miguel, the day shift janitor, shook his head when he saw Maria. "You should have known better," he said. "Rich people don't like it when we touch their expensive things. Now you've made trouble for all of us." Even Mr. Peterson, the security guard, seemed uncomfortable around her. He used to nod and say hello when she signed in for work. Now he just looked at her clipboard and waved her through without making eye contact. But the worst part was Mr. Hartwell himself. He made sure Maria understood that he was watching her. Every few nights he would show up early for work, just to check on things. He never said anything to Maria directly, but she could feel his eyes on her. One morning, Maria found a memo posted in the employee break room. It was signed by Mr. Hartwell and addressed to all cleaning staff. The title was, "Proper Use of Company Property." The memo said that cleaning employees were only allowed to touch items necessary for cleaning. Personal use of company equipment was strictly forbidden. Anyone caught using company property for non-work purposes would be fired immediately. Maria read the memo 3 times. She knew it was about her, even though it didn't mention her name. Everyone else knew it too. She could feel the other employees looking at her as she read it. "That's what happens when people don't know their place," she heard someone whisper behind her. Maria folded the memo and put it in her pocket. She carried it with her for days, a reminder of her mistake and her humiliation, At home, Maria tried to act normal around Sophia and Miguel. But children notice when their mother is sad. They could see that something was wrong. "Mama, why are you so quiet lately?" Sophia asked one afternoon when Maria picked her up from school. "I'm just tired, sweetheart," Maria said. "Work has been difficult." "Did someone at work say something mean to you?" Miguel asked. He was only 9, but he was very smart. He always seemed to know when his mother was upset. Maria didn't want to lie to her children, but she didn't want to worry them either. "Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements at work," she said. "It's nothing for you to worry about." But Maria was worried. She was worried about keeping her job. She was worried about the way people looked at her. Most of all, she was worried about the music. The piano haunted her thoughts. Every night when she walked past the conference room, she remembered the feeling of the keys under her fingers. She remembered the beautiful sound filling the room. She remembered feeling like herself again, like the person she used to be. But now the piano felt like a forbidden thing, like something she should never have touched. Maria cleaned around it carefully, just like Mr. Hartwell had ordered. She dusted the wood without looking at the keys. She pretended it wasn't there. The hardest part was the silence. For 2 months, playing piano had been the best part of Maria's day. It had given her hope and joy and a connection to her old dreams. Now that was gone, and the nights felt empty and long. Maria started making mistakes at work. She was distracted and sad, and it showed. She forgot to empty a trash can in Mr. Johnson's office. She missed a spot on Mrs. Williams's window. She spilled cleaning solution on the carpet in the hallway. These were small mistakes, but Maria had never made mistakes before. She had always been a perfect employee, quiet, reliable, invisible. Now she was the cleaning lady who thought she could play piano, the one who had caused trouble. Other employees started treating her like she was different. Not just different from before, but different from them. Like she thought she was better than other cleaning people. "Who does she think she is?" Maria heard one woman say in the bathroom. "Playing piano like she's some kind of musician. She's just a janitor like the rest of us." "I heard she used to study music or something," another voice replied. "But that doesn't give her the right to use the boss's piano." "She should be grateful she still has a job," the first woman said. "If I was Mr. Hartwell, I would have fired her on the spot." Maria stood in the bathroom stall listening to them talk about her. She felt her face get hot with shame. She wanted to defend herself, to explain that she had only been trying to remember who she used to be, but she knew it would only make things worse. When the women left, Maria looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. She saw a tired woman in a cleaning uniform. She saw someone who had made a foolish mistake and embarrassed herself. She saw someone who had forgotten her place in the world. At home that night, Maria sat on her bed and cried quietly. She thought about Carlos and how proud he had been when she played piano. He used to say she had magic in her fingers. He used to encourage her to follow her dreams. But Carlos was gone, and dreams were for people who could afford them. Maria had responsibilities. She had children to feed and bills to pay. She didn't have time for music and fantasies about being a pianist. The old keyboard that Sophia had gotten for Christmas sat in the corner of the living room. Maria hadn't touched it since the incident with Mr. Hartwell. Every time she looked at it, she remembered his angry voice and cold eyes. "That piano costs more than you make in 2 years," he had said. The words echoed in her head over and over. Maybe he was right. Maybe she should stick to cleaning and forget about music. Maybe trying to be something more than a janitor had been a mistake from the beginning. Sophia noticed that her mother wasn't playing the keyboard anymore. "Mama, why don't you play music for us?" she asked one evening. "I liked it when you played." "I don't have time for that anymore, sweetheart," Maria said. "I need to focus on work." But the truth was that Maria was scared. Scared of wanting something she couldn't have. Scared of dreaming about a different life when this was the only life she could afford. Scared of feeling like herself again, only to be reminded that she was just a cleaning lady who had forgotten her place. The days turned into weeks. Maria did her job and went home. She avoided the other employees as much as possible. She didn't make any more mistakes, but she also didn't feel any joy in her work. The conference room became the hardest part of her shift. Every night she had to clean around the piano, pretending it didn't exist. She could see her reflection in the shiny black surface, but she tried not to look. She didn't want to remember what it felt like to sit there and play. One night, as she was dusting the piano bench, Maria's hand slipped and bumped against the keys. One note rang out in the silence, a clear, beautiful sound that filled the room. Maria froze. She looked around quickly, making sure no one had heard. The building was empty, just like always. But her heart was beating fast, like she had done something wrong. She finished cleaning as quickly as possible and left the conference room. As she pushed her cart down the hallway, she tried not to think about the single note she had heard. She tried not to remember how much she missed making music. But the sound followed her home that night. It played in her head as she fell asleep. It reminded her of everything she had lost and everything she would never have again. Maria Santos, the woman who used to dream of being a concert pianist, had learned to be invisible again. She had learned to stay in her place, to keep her dreams quiet and small. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, she still heard music in her head. And sometimes she still remembered what it felt like to be more than just a cleaning lady in a uniform, even though she tried very hard to forget. Thomas Chen had been working late at Hartwell Financial for 3 weeks now. He wasn't an employee of the company. He was an investor, a venture capitalist with his own firm. But he was working on a big deal with Hartwell Financial, and sometimes big deals required long hours and temporary office space. Thomas was different from Richard Hartwell in many ways. He had built his wealth from nothing, starting with a small tech company in his 20s. He understood what it meant to work hard and struggle. He remembered what it felt like to worry about money. Now at 45, Thomas was successful and wealthy, but he tried never to forget where he came from. He treated everyone with respect, from CEOs to security guards. His own employees loved working for him because he was fair and kind. The temporary office Hartwell Financial had given Thomas was on the 15th floor. It was a nice office with a window view and comfortable furniture. Thomas often worked there until very late, sometimes until 2 or 3 in the morning. He was a night person, and he did his best thinking when the world was quiet. About a month ago, Thomas had started hearing something beautiful during his late-night work sessions. It was piano music, drifting up through the building's ventilation system. The sound was faint but clear enough to recognize. At first, Thomas thought maybe someone was playing a radio or listening to classical music on their computer. But as he listened more carefully, he realized it was live piano playing. Someone in the building was actually playing a real piano. The music was incredible. Thomas had studied piano as a child, so he knew good playing when he heard it. This wasn't amateur music. This was professional-level skill. The person playing knew what they were doing. Thomas found himself looking forward to the music each night. It usually started around 2 a.m. and lasted for about 20 minutes. The pieces were always classical: Chopin, Bach, Debussy, sometimes Rachmaninoff. Beautiful, emotional music that made Thomas's late-night work feel less lonely. He started timing his breaks to coincide with the music. He would stop typing and just listen, letting the melodies fill his office. It was like having a private concert every night. Thomas wondered who the mysterious pianist was. At first, he thought it might be one of the executives. Maybe Mr. Johnson or Mrs. Williams played piano. But Thomas had met all the executives during business meetings, and none of them seemed like musicians. They were all business-focused people who talked about numbers and profits, not art and music. Thomas was curious by nature. It came from being an investor. He was always interested in discovering hidden talents and unexpected opportunities. The mystery pianist became a puzzle he wanted to solve. One night, the music stopped suddenly in the middle of a piece. Thomas waited for it to continue, but it didn't. The building was silent again. He wondered what had happened. Maybe someone had interrupted the musician. For the next few nights, there was no music at all. Thomas missed it more than he expected. He had gotten used to the beautiful sounds floating up from somewhere in the building. Without the music, his late-night work felt empty and boring. Then, 3 nights ago, Thomas had heard angry voices coming from the floor above him. Someone was yelling, though he couldn't make out the words. It sounded like an argument or confrontation. After that, the music had stopped completely. Thomas began to suspect that his mysterious pianist had gotten in trouble somehow. Maybe they had been playing without permission. Maybe someone had complained about the noise, though Thomas couldn't imagine why. The music was beautiful and not very loud. As a successful businessman, Thomas understood office politics and power dynamics. He knew that sometimes talented people got crushed by rules and hierarchies. He had seen it happen in his own industry. Creative, brilliant people being shut down by bosses who didn't appreciate their gifts. The more Thomas thought about it, the more he wanted to find out what had happened to his nighttime musician. He was a problem solver by nature. When he saw injustice or wasted talent, he felt compelled to do something about it. Thomas had several ways he could investigate. He had good relationships with people throughout the building. He could ask questions casually without drawing attention to himself. He was respected as an important investor, so people would talk to him honestly. He started with the day shift security guard, a friendly older man named Mr. Rodriguez. "I've been working late here for a few weeks," Thomas said casually one afternoon. "I used to hear piano music at night sometimes. Beautiful classical pieces. Do you know who was playing?" Mr. Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. "Oh, you heard about that situation," he said. Well, it became a problem." "What kind of problem?" Thomas asked. "One of the night cleaning staff was playing the piano in the executive conference room," Mr. Rodriguez explained. "Mr. Hartwell found out and put a stop to it. She's not supposed to be touching that equipment." "The cleaning staff?" Thomas was surprised. He had assumed the musician was an executive or maybe someone's assistant. Someone who cleans the building plays piano like that? "I guess she used to study music or something," Mr. Rodriguez said. "But you know how it is. Employees need to stick to their job duties. That piano is expensive and it's not for personal use." Thomas asked more questions carefully. He learned that the pianist was a woman named Maria Santos, who worked the night cleaning shift. She was a single mother with 2 kids. She had been caught playing the piano by Mr. Hartwell himself, and she had been humiliated and warned never to touch it again. The more Thomas learned about the situation, the more upset he became. Here was someone with obvious musical talent, working as a janitor and playing piano during her breaks because she loved music so much she couldn't help herself. And instead of recognizing her gift, the company had shut her down and made her feel ashamed. Thomas thought about his own journey to success. He had been lucky to have mentors who recognized his potential and gave him opportunities. What if this Maria Santos just needed someone to believe in her talent? That night, Thomas stayed late again, hoping to meet Maria during her shift. He wanted to hear her story directly from her. He wanted to understand what had really happened and maybe find a way to help. Around 1 a.m., Thomas heard the sound of a cleaning cart in the hallway outside his office. He opened his door and saw a small woman in a cleaning uniform pushing a cart full of supplies. "Excuse me," Thomas said gently. "Are you Maria Santos?" The woman looked startled and a little scared. "Yes, sir. I'm sorry, am I making too much noise? I can come back later if you're working." No, you're fine," Thomas said. "I'm Thomas Chen. I'm working on a project with Mr. Hartwell. I was wondering if I could talk to you for a minute." Maria looked even more nervous. "Am I in trouble? Did I do something wrong?" Thomas could see the fear in her eyes. She was expecting to be yelled at or fired. It broke his heart to see someone so talented looking so scared and defeated. "You're not in trouble at all," Thomas said kindly. "Actually, I wanted to ask you about your piano playing. I used to hear it at night when I was working late." "It was beautiful." Maria's face went red. She looked down at the floor. "I'm sorry about that, sir. I know I wasn't supposed to be playing. Mr. Hartwell made it very clear that I'm not allowed to touch the piano anymore." "But you play so well," Thomas said. "Where did you learn?" Maria looked up at him, surprised by the question. Most people in the building had been treating her like she had done something shameful. This man seemed genuinely interested in her music. "I studied at the conservatory years ago," she said quietly. "Before I got married and had children. I haven't played much since then except when you could sneak some time at the piano here," Thomas finished. Maria nodded, looking embarrassed again. Thomas felt a mix of sadness and excitement. Sadness that such a talented person had been made to feel ashamed of her gift. Excitement because he might be able to do something about it. He had built his career on recognizing potential and investing in it. Usually he invested money in business ideas, but sometimes the best investments were in people. "Maria," Thomas said, "would you be willing to talk to me more about your music background? Maybe we could meet for coffee sometime when you're not working." Maria looked confused. "I don't understand, sir. Why would you want to talk about my music? I'm just a cleaning lady." "No," Thomas said firmly. "You're a pianist who happens to work as a cleaning lady. There's a big difference." For the first time in weeks, Maria smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. Thomas Chen had found his mysterious musician. Now he needed to figure out how to help her find her way back to the music she clearly loved so much. He had a feeling this was going to be the most important investment he had ever made. Thomas Chen couldn't stop thinking about his conversation with Maria Santos. Something about her situation bothered him deeply. Here was a woman with incredible musical talent, working as a janitor and being made to feel ashamed for loving music. It reminded him of all the times he had seen potential being wasted because of circumstances or prejudice. The next morning, Thomas had an idea. If he could prove how talented Maria really was, maybe he could help her in a more concrete way. But he needed evidence. He needed to document her skill somehow. Thomas remembered the angry voices he had heard the night Maria got caught. Mr. Hartwell had been yelling at someone on the executive floor. That meant the confrontation had happened in the conference room where the piano was located. If the building had security cameras, maybe they had recorded the incident. Thomas had invested in enough companies to know that most modern buildings had extensive security systems. And if there were cameras, there might be audio recording too. Thomas decided to investigate. As a major investor in the company, he had some access to building operations. He could ask reasonable questions about security without seeming suspicious. He found Mr. Peterson, the night security guard, during the shift change at 6 p.m. "Mr. Peterson," Thomas said, "I've been working late here quite a bit. I'm curious about the building's security system. How extensive is the camera coverage?" Mr. Peterson seemed happy to talk about his job. "Oh, we have cameras everywhere, Mr. Chen, every floor, every hallway, most of the offices. The system was upgraded about 6 months ago. State-of-the-art equipment." "That's good to hear," Thomas said. "I assume the recordings are stored digitally?" "Yes, sir. Everything goes to the main security computer in the basement. We keep recordings for 90 days, then they get automatically deleted to make room for new files." Thomas's pulse quickened. If Maria had been playing piano regularly for 2 months and the new system had been in place for 6 months, then her performances might be recorded. "Does the system record audio as well as video?" Thomas asked. Mr. Peterson nodded. "The new cameras have audio recording. Very sensitive microphones. We can pick up conversations from across a room. Though to be honest, most of the time we just monitor the video feeds. We don't usually listen to the audio unless there's an incident." "An incident like what happened with the cleaning lady and the piano?" Thomas asked casually. Mr. Peterson looked uncomfortable. "You heard about that?" "Yeah, Mr. Hartwell was not happy about that situation. Made me pull the video footage to document what happened." Thomas felt his heart racing. "So there's video footage of her playing piano?" "Oh yes," Mr. Peterson said. "Clear as day. She was really playing that thing, not just fooling around. Sounded professional to me, but I don't know much about classical music." Thomas tried to keep his voice casual. "Would it be possible for me to see that footage? I'm curious about the security system's capabilities, and it sounds like a good test case." Mr. Peterson hesitated. "Well, you're an important investor here. I suppose it would be okay. The footage is just going to get deleted eventually anyway." Thomas followed Mr. Peterson down to the basement security office. It was a small room filled with monitors and computer equipment. The guard sat down at the main computer and started typing. "Let me find the right date," Mr. Peterson said. "It was about 3 weeks ago when Mr. Hartwell caught her." Thomas watched as Mr. Peterson scrolled through files and video clips. The security system was indeed sophisticated. There were cameras covering every angle of the building. "Here we go," Mr. Peterson said. "Conference room, executive floor. This is from the night before Mr. Hartwell found her." The video showed the conference room in low light. At first it looked empty. Then a figure in a cleaning uniform entered, Maria Santos with her cleaning cart. Thomas watched as she cleaned the room methodically, just like any other janitor would. But then something beautiful happened. Maria approached the piano, looked around to make sure she was alone, and sat down at the bench. She lifted the piano lid and placed her hands on the keys. Even through the small computer speakers, the music was incredible. Thomas recognized the piece, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. Maria played it with such emotion and technical skill that Thomas felt chills running down his spine. "She's amazing," Thomas said without thinking. "Yeah, she can really play," Mr. Peterson agreed. "Seems like a waste for her to be cleaning buildings instead of performing somewhere." Thomas watched Maria's face as she played. Her eyes were closed and she looked completely absorbed in the music. She wasn't just playing notes. She was expressing something deep and beautiful. This was the face of a true musician, someone for whom music was as necessary as breathing. "Are there other recordings?" Thomas asked. Did she play often? Let me check, Mr. Peterson said. He scrolled through more files. Looks like she was playing almost every night for about 2 months. Always around the same time, always for about 20 minutes. Thomas felt a surge of excitement and sadness. Excitement because he was witnessing documented proof of Maria's incredible talent. Sadness because she had been doing this alone in secret, with no one to appreciate her gift. Can you show me a few more? Thomas asked. For the next hour, Thomas watched and listened to Maria's secret concerts. She played Bach inventions with perfect clarity. She performed Debussy preludes with delicate sensitivity. She tackled Rachmaninoff pieces that required tremendous technical skill. Each performance was flawless. Maria wasn't just a good amateur pianist, she was playing at a professional level. Thomas had heard concert pianists who weren't as skilled as this cleaning lady playing alone in an empty conference room. Mr. Peterson, Thomas said, would it be possible to get copies of these recordings? The security guard looked uncertain. I don't know if that's allowed. These are security files. I understand your concern, Thomas said, but think about it this way. These recordings document something extraordinary. This woman has incredible talent that's being wasted. Maybe someone should preserve this music before it gets deleted. Thomas could see Mr. Peterson wavering. The older man had been moved by Maria's playing too. What would you do with the recordings? Mr. Peterson asked. I'm not sure yet, Thomas answered honestly, but I think Maria Santos deserves a chance to be heard. She deserves an opportunity to use her talent for something more than late-night secret concerts. Mr. Peterson was quiet for a moment, listening to Maria play a beautiful Bach piece on the computer. Finally, he made a decision. These recordings are going to be deleted in a few weeks anyway, he said. I suppose if someone wanted to preserve them for historical purposes, that wouldn't hurt anyone. Thomas smiled. Historical purposes, exactly. Mr. Peterson copied the audio files to a flash drive. There were dozens of them, 2 months' worth of Maria's nighttime performances. Thank you, Thomas said. You might have just saved something really important. That night, Thomas went home and listened to every single recording. He sat in his home office with his eyes closed, letting Maria's music fill the room. Each piece told a story of longing, of dreams deferred, of beauty persisting even in difficult circumstances. Thomas had spent his career recognizing valuable things that other people overlooked. He had invested in small tech companies that became giants. He had funded artists and inventors and entrepreneurs when no one else believed in them. But he had never discovered anything as valuable as what he was hearing now. Maria Santos wasn't just talented, she was extraordinary. Her playing had the kind of emotional depth and technical mastery that could move audiences and critics alike. The tragedy was that she was wasting her gift, cleaning buildings and hiding her music like it was something to be ashamed of. The bigger tragedy was that the world was missing out on hearing her play. Thomas made a decision that night. He was going to find a way to help Maria Santos become the pianist she was meant to be. He didn't know exactly how yet, but he knew it was possible. He had the recordings to prove her talent. He had the financial resources to support her training. He had connections in the music world who could give her opportunities. All he needed now was Maria's agreement to take a leap of faith. Thomas looked at the clock. It was 2 a.m., exactly the time when Maria used to play her secret concerts. He wondered if she was at work right now, cleaning the conference room, looking at the piano and remembering the music she used to make. Tomorrow, Thomas decided he would ask Maria Santos if she wanted to change her life. He hoped she would say yes. 3 weeks had passed since Thomas discovered the recordings of Maria's piano playing. He had spent those weeks making phone calls, researching music schools, and putting together a plan. Now he was ready to make Maria an offer that could change her life forever. Thomas waited until Maria's shift on a quiet Thursday night. He had arranged to work late again, giving him a reason to be in the building. At 1:30 a.m., he heard the familiar sound of her cleaning cart in the hallway. Thomas opened his office door and stepped into the hallway. Maria was cleaning the offices on his floor, moving efficiently from room to room. She looked tired, and Thomas noticed that she seemed sadder than when he had first met her weeks ago. "Good evening, Maria," Thomas said gently. Maria looked up, startled. She recognized him as the kind man who had asked about her piano playing. "Oh, hello, Mr. Chen. I didn't know you were still here." "I wanted to talk to you," Thomas said. "Do you have a few minutes?" Maria glanced at her cart and then at the clock on the wall. I suppose I can take a short break. Is everything okay? More than okay, Thomas said. Actually, I have something important to discuss with you. Would you mind if we sat down somewhere? Maria looked nervous. In her experience, important discussions with wealthy men usually meant trouble. But Thomas had been kind to her before, so she nodded. They went to the employee break room on the floor below. Thomas poured 2 cups of coffee from the machine and sat across from Maria at the small table. He could see the worry in her eyes. Maria, Thomas began, I need to tell you something that might surprise you. For the past few weeks, I've been listening to recordings of you playing piano. Maria's face went pale. Recordings? I don't understand. The building's security system records audio as well as video, Thomas explained gently. Your piano playing was captured on the security cameras. Before the files get deleted, I managed to get copies of them. Maria stood up quickly, panic in her eyes. Oh no, are you going to tell Mr. Hartwell? Am I going to lose my job? No, Thomas said urgently. Please sit down. You're not in trouble, just the opposite. Maria sat back down, but she still looked scared. Maria, I want you to understand something, Thomas continued. I've listened to dozens of your recordings. Your playing is extraordinary. You're not just good, you're amazing. Professional level amazing. I don't understand why you're telling me this, Maria said quietly. Thomas leaned forward. Because I want to help you. I want to help you become the pianist you're meant to be. Maria stared at him. What do you mean? I mean I want to invest in your talent, Thomas said. I want to pay for you to return to music school. I want to cover your living expenses while you focus on piano training. I want to help you build a career as a professional musician. The silence in the break room was complete. Maria's mouth was open, but no words came out. She looked like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. I don't understand, she finally whispered. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. I know your music, Thomas said. And your music tells me everything I need to know about who you are. You have a gift, Maria, a real gift. It would be a tragedy to waste it. Maria shook her head slowly. Mr. Chen, I think you're very kind, but I can't accept something like that. I have responsibilities. I have 2 children to take care of. I need this job. What if I told you that pursuing music could provide better for your children in the long run? Thomas asked. What if I told you that with proper training and support, you could build a career that would give your family a much better life? But that's impossible, Maria said. I'm 34 years old. I haven't had proper piano lessons in 15 years. Professional musicians start training when they're children. It's too late for me. Thomas smiled. Maria, I've heard you play. Age doesn't matter when you have talent like yours. Yes, it will take work. Yes, it will be challenging. But it's absolutely not too late. He pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. This is Elena Rodriguez. She's one of the most respected piano teachers in the city. I've already spoken with her about you. I played her some of your recordings. Maria's eyes widened. You played my recordings for someone else? Only the audio, Thomas said quickly. I didn't tell her your name or anything about your situation. I just wanted her professional opinion on your playing. What did she say? Maria asked nervously. She said you have exceptional natural talent and musical sensitivity. She said that with intensive training, you could be performing professionally within a year or 2. She said she would be honored to work with someone of your ability. Maria put her hand to her forehead. This was too much to process. Mr. Chen, even if what you're saying is true, I can't just stop working. My children need food and clothing and a place to live. I can't take risks with their future. You wouldn't have to, Thomas said. I would cover all your expenses, rent, food, childcare, everything. You wouldn't have to worry about money while you're training. But why? Maria asked. Why would you spend so much money on someone like me? Thomas was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain. Maria, I'm an investor. I look for valuable things that other people have overlooked. I've built my career on recognizing potential and helping it grow. He leaned back in his chair. But this is different. This isn't just business for me. When I heard you playing those first nights, your music made my work feel less lonely. It made the whole building feel more alive. Music has the power to touch people's lives in ways that nothing else can. I used to believe that, Maria said softly, before life got in the way. Life doesn't have to get in the way, Thomas said. Sometimes life presents us with unexpected opportunities. Sometimes the thing we love most can become the thing that saves us. Maria was quiet for a long time. Thomas could see her thinking, weighing the possibilities against the risks. "What about my children?" she asked finally. "They're settled in their school. They have friends. Sophia is doing well in her classes. There are excellent schools near the music conservatory," Thomas said. "Your children could have opportunities you can't give them now. Piano lessons for Sophia if she's interested. Art classes. Better schools with more resources. And what if I fail?" Maria asked. "What if I'm not as good as you think I am? What if I can't make it as a musician?" Thomas smiled. "Maria, I've heard you play. Failure isn't something you need to worry about. But even if things don't go exactly as planned, you'll have skills and connections and experiences that will open doors for you. You'll be better off than you are now." Maria looked down at her hands. They were rough and calloused from cleaning work. But Thomas had seen those same hands create beautiful music. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Being scared is normal," Thomas said. "Every successful person I know was scared when they took their biggest risks. The question is, are you more scared of trying and failing or of never trying at all?" Maria thought about her life. The long nights of cleaning, the worry about money, the dreams she had given up. She thought about Sophia and Miguel and the kind of future she wanted for them. "If I said yes," she said slowly, "what would happen next?" Thomas's face lit up. "First, you'd give notice at your current job. Then you'd start lessons with Elena Rodriguez immediately. We'd find you a small apartment near the conservatory. You'd practice several hours every day while your children are in school. And after that, after 6 months of intensive training, you'd start performing. Small venues at first, coffee shops, community centers, private events. Then bigger opportunities as word spreads about your talent. Within a year, you could be giving real concerts." Maria closed her eyes and tried to imagine it, standing on a stage, playing piano for an audience that appreciated her music, making a living doing what she loved most, being able to provide for her children not by cleaning buildings but by creating something beautiful. It seemed impossible. But then again, so had playing piano in the executive conference room, and she had done that for 2 months. "Mr. Chen," Maria said, opening her eyes, "if I say yes to this, there's no going back, is there?" "No," Thomas said honestly. "But Maria, you can't go back anyway. You can't unknow what you know about your own talent. You can't unfeel what you felt when you were playing that piano." Maria stood up and walked to the window. She could see the city lights stretching out in all directions. Somewhere out there, people were living their dreams. Maybe it was time for her to live hers too. She turned back to Thomas. "When would I start?" Thomas smiled. "As soon as you're ready." Maria took a deep breath. "Then I guess I'm ready to change my life." 1 year later, Maria Santos stood backstage at the Meridian Concert Hall, wearing a beautiful black dress and feeling her heart beat fast with nervous excitement. In 20 minutes, she would walk onto the stage and give her debut recital as a professional pianist. The past year had been the most challenging and rewarding of Maria's life. True to his word, Thomas Chen had supported her completely. He had paid for her apartment, her children's school, her piano lessons, and everything else she needed to focus entirely on her music. Elena Rodriguez had been a demanding but wonderful teacher. She had pushed Maria to practice 4 hours every day, to perfect her technique, and to dig deeper into the emotional meaning of each piece she played. "You have natural talent," Elena had told her, "but talent without discipline is just potential. We need to turn your potential into mastery." The work had been exhausting. Maria's fingers hurt from the intensive practice. Her brain was tired from learning complex musical theory. Some days she wondered if she had made the right choice, especially when Sophia complained about missing her old friends or when Miguel asked why Mama was always practicing piano instead of playing with him. But Thomas had been right about one thing. Her children's lives were better now. They lived in a nicer apartment in a safer neighborhood. Sophia was taking art classes and had discovered she loved to paint. Miguel had joined a soccer team and was making new friends. Most importantly, they could see that their mother was happy in a way she hadn't been for years. The first few months of training had been the hardest. Maria's hands were out of practice, and she had to rebuild her strength and coordination. She made mistakes that frustrated her. Sometimes she cried after particularly difficult lessons, wondering if she was too old to learn to play like a professional. But gradually, her skill returned and then grew beyond what it had been in her youth. The years of life experience had given her music a depth and emotional richness that her younger self couldn't have achieved. When she played sad pieces, she understood sadness. When she played joyful music, she knew what real joy felt like. 6 months after starting her training, Maria gave her first public performance at a small cafe downtown. Her hands shook as she sat down at the old upright piano, but as soon as she started playing, the nervousness disappeared. The audience, mostly coffee drinkers and college students, gradually stopped talking and listened. When she finished her short set, they applauded enthusiastically. Several people came up to her afterward to ask when she would be performing again. One woman said Maria's music had moved her to tears. That night, Maria called Thomas to thank him. "I never thought I could feel this way again," she said. "Playing for people who actually want to hear my music. It's incredible." "That's just the beginning," Thomas had replied. "Wait until you see what happens next." Word about Maria's talent spread quickly through the local music scene. She started getting invitations to play at gallery openings, private parties, and small concert venues. Each performance built her confidence and her reputation. Elena Rodriguez introduced her to other musicians and music lovers. Soon, Maria had a network of people who supported her career and helped her find new opportunities. The breakthrough came 8 months after her first lesson. A music critic from the city newspaper heard Maria play at a charity fundraiser and wrote a glowing review. He called her a musician of extraordinary sensitivity and technical skill, and said her performance was the kind of magical experience that reminds us why live music matters. After the review was published, bigger venues started calling. Maria was invited to perform with the City Symphony as a guest soloist. She was asked to play at the annual arts festival. Concert promoters wanted to book her for recitals at prestigious venues. Thomas had been with her through every step of the journey. He attended her performances, celebrated her successes, and encouraged her when things got difficult. He had become more than just her benefactor. He had become a friend and mentor. Tonight's recital at the Meridian Concert Hall was the culmination of everything Maria had worked for. It was a solo concert, with her name on the marquee outside. The tickets had sold out completely. In the audience tonight were Sofia and Miguel, wearing their best clothes and barely able to contain their excitement about seeing their mother perform on such a famous stage. Elena Rodriguez was there, proud of her students' progress. Thomas Chen sat in the front row, beaming with satisfaction at seeing his investment in Maria pay off so beautifully. Also in the audience, somewhat to Maria's surprise, was Richard Hartwell III. Thomas had insisted on inviting him as part of a business courtesy. Richard had accepted the invitation, probably out of curiosity more than interest in the music. Maria had mixed feelings about Richard being there. Part of her wanted to show him what he had tried to crush a year ago. Part of her felt nervous about playing in front of the man who had humiliated her so completely. But mostly she felt grateful. If Richard hadn't caught her that night, if he hadn't made her feel so ashamed of her music, she might never have met Thomas. She might still be cleaning buildings and playing piano in secret, never knowing what she was truly capable of achieving. A stagehand knocked on the dressing room door. 5 minutes, Ms. Santos." Maria looked at herself in the mirror one last time. Her hands were steady now. Her breathing was calm. She thought about the program she had chosen for tonight. Pieces by Chopin, Bach, Debussy, and Rachmaninoff. The same composers she had played during those lonely nights in the conference room. Tonight she would play the same nocturne in E-flat major that had been flowing from her fingers when Richard Hartwell had burst in and told her to get back to her mops and buckets. But now she would play it for an audience of 800 people who had paid to hear her music. Maria walked to the stage entrance and waited for her cue. She could hear the audience settling into their seats, the gentle murmur of conversation and anticipation. The house lights dimmed. The stage manager nodded to her. Maria Santos walked onto the stage of the Meridian Concert Hall. The spotlight followed her to the beautiful Steinway grand piano at center stage. She sat down at the bench and adjusted her position. The audience was completely silent, waiting. Maria placed her hands on the keys and began to play the Chopin Nocturne. The first notes filled the concert hall, pure and clear and heartbreakingly beautiful. As she played, Maria looked out into the audience. She could see Thomas in the front row, his face full of pride and joy. She could see her children, Sophia and Miguel, watching their mother with wonder and love. And she could see Richard Hartwell, sitting stiffly in his expensive suit, his face showing surprise and what might have been the beginning of understanding. The music flowed from Maria's fingers and filled every corner of the concert hall. The audience was completely still, absorbed in the beauty of what they were hearing. This was the same music Maria had played alone in the empty conference room, but now it was shared with hundreds of people who could appreciate its power and beauty. As the nocturne reached its gentle conclusion, Maria felt tears in her eyes. Not tears of sadness, but tears of overwhelming gratitude and joy. She had found her way home to the music she loved. She had become the person she was always meant to be. The last note faded into silence. For a moment, the audience was still, as if they didn't want to break the spell. Then the applause began. It started softly but quickly grew into a thunderous ovation. People stood up, clapping and cheering. Someone in the balcony called out, "Bravo!" Others whistled and shouted their approval. Maria stood up and bowed, her face shining with happiness. She looked out at the audience. All these people who had been moved by her music, who had been touched by the same emotions she felt when she played. In the front row, Thomas Chen was applauding enthusiastically, his eyes bright with pride. Next to him, Richard Hartwell was clapping more slowly, his expression thoughtful and perhaps a little ashamed. Maria had 3 more pieces to play before the concert was over, but she already knew this night would change everything. Tomorrow, the reviews would be published. Next week, she would start getting calls about other concerts in other cities. Her career as a professional pianist had truly begun. But for now, she just stood on the stage and took in the moment. The janitor who had been told to stop playing piano had become the pianist she was always meant to be. The woman who had cleaned buildings at night was now performing in one of the city's most prestigious concert halls. As the applause continued, Maria thought about all the people who had helped her reach this moment. Thomas, who had believed in her talent when no one else did. Elena Rodriguez, who had pushed her to become better than she ever imagined possible. Her children who had supported her dream even when it meant big changes in their lives. She even thought about Richard Hartwell, whose harsh words had set everything in motion. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead to the best outcomes, she realized. Sometimes we need to be broken down before we can be built back up into who we're supposed to be. The applause finally began to quiet down. Maria sat back down at the piano to continue her program. She played Bach with crystal clarity, each note perfectly placed and beautifully shaped. She performed Debussy with delicate sensitivity, painting musical pictures that made the audience sigh with pleasure. She finished with a challenging Rachmaninoff piece that showcased her technical brilliance and emotional depth. Each piece received enthusiastic applause, but it was clear that the audience was completely captivated. They had come expecting to hear a good pianist. Instead, they were witnessing something special. A true artist sharing her gift with the world. After the final piece, the standing ovation lasted for several minutes. People called for an encore, and Maria obliged by playing a simple, beautiful piece by Schumann that she had learned during her first month of lessons with Elena. When the concert finally ended, Maria was surrounded backstage by well-wishers, music critics, and concert promoters. Everyone wanted to talk to her, to book her for future performances, to be part of what was clearly the beginning of a remarkable career. But the people Maria most wanted to see were her children. Sophia and Miguel pushed through the crowd and threw their arms around their mother. "Mama, you were amazing," Sophia said, her eyes shining with pride. "I want to learn to play piano just like you." "You sounded like an angel," Miguel added, hugging her tightly. "All those people loved your music." Thomas Chen appeared next, carrying a huge bouquet of flowers. "Maria, that was extraordinary. I knew you were talented, but tonight you exceeded every expectation I had." "I couldn't have done any of this without you," Maria said, accepting the flowers. "You saved my life, Thomas. You gave me back my dreams." "No," Thomas replied. "I just gave you an opportunity. You did all the hard work. You saved yourself." As the crowd began to thin out, Maria noticed Richard Hartwell standing awkwardly near the door. He seemed to be waiting for something but unsure of what to do. Maria excused herself and walked over to him. Up close, she could see that he looked uncomfortable and perhaps a little embarrassed. "Mr. Hartwell," Maria said politely. "Thank you for coming tonight." Richard cleared his throat. "Mrs. Santos, I owe you an apology. A year ago, I treated you terribly. I said things that were cruel and unfair." "You were protecting your property," Maria said simply. "I understand that." "No," Richard shook his head. "I was being a snob and a bully. I judged you based on your job instead of seeing who you really were. Tonight I heard what I tried to silence a year ago. I heard something beautiful that I almost destroyed." Maria studied his face. She could see that he was genuinely sorry, and that meant something to her. "Mr. Hartwell, if you hadn't caught me that night, I would never have met Thomas. I would never have had this opportunity. In a strange way, you helped make this possible." Richard looked surprised. "I don't deserve credit for any of this. This is all your achievement." "Maybe," Maria said. "But sometimes good things come from difficult experiences. Sometimes we need to be challenged before we can grow." Richard nodded slowly. "I hope you'll forgive me for the way I treated you. You deserve so much better than what you received from me." "I forgive you," Maria said, and she meant it. Holding on to anger would only diminish the joy of this moment. Richard shook her hand formally. "I hope your career brings you everything you deserve. You're truly gifted." After Richard left, Maria gathered her things and prepared to go home with her children. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight was perfect. As they walked out of the concert hall together, Sophia asked, "Mama, are you going to be famous now?" Maria laughed. "I don't know about famous, sweetheart, but I'm going to keep playing piano and trying to make beautiful music for people to enjoy." "Will you still have time to help me with my homework?" Miguel asked, a little worried. "Always," Maria promised, ruffling his hair. "Being a pianist doesn't mean I stop being your mama. It just means I'm a happier mama." Outside the concert hall, Maria's name was displayed on the marquee in elegant letters, Maria Santos. Piano recital sold out. She stopped for a moment to look at it, still hardly believing it was real. A year ago, she had been a cleaning lady who played piano in secret, afraid of being caught and humiliated. Tonight, she was a professional musician who had just given a triumphant debut performance to a sold-out audience. The journey from janitor to pianist had been difficult, scary, and sometimes overwhelming. But it had also been the most meaningful year of Maria's life. She had rediscovered who she really was underneath all the worry and struggle and doubt. As they walked to Thomas's car, which would take them home to their new life, Maria felt a deep sense of gratitude and peace. She had found her way back to the music she loved. She had provided a better future for her children. She had proven to herself and the world that it's never too late to pursue your dreams. Most importantly, she had learned that sometimes the most unlikely encounters can unlock doors to dreams we thought were lost forever. Sometimes a cruel confrontation can lead to an unexpected friendship. Sometimes losing everything can be the first step toward gaining something better. The cleaning lady who was told to stop playing piano had become the pianist she was always meant to be. And this was only the beginning of her story. As Thomas drove them through the city streets past the Hartwell Financial Building where it all started, Maria hummed the Chopin nocturne that had changed her life. The melody drifted through the car, beautiful and hopeful and full of possibilities. In the distance, the lights of the city sparkled like musical notes on a vast staff, waiting to be played by someone brave enough to reach for their dreams.